Today we're under the Jeep and it's quick project time. Let's replace the differential fluid on the front differential. Here's a few items that you're going to need. You're going to want some brake cleaner and you're going to want a drip pan. You're also going to want some gasket maker. I'm using Permatex Red High Temp. You're also going to want some gear lubricant. Today I'm going to be using 85W140. Before you go any further with this project, make sure that this plug right here is loose enough to remove. If it's not, you're going to have a lot of problems later on down the line. So go ahead and just loosen that plug up, but you don't have to remove it all the way if you don't want to. The nice thing about these plugs is the end of your standard socket extension should fit in there perfectly. As long as that's loose enough to turn, you're good to go. All the other bolts on this project are 13mm. I have our little socket right here. With my drip pan in place, I have loosened every bolt around the front differential. Be careful with the top one, however. I've loosened it a little bit, but we're not going to remove that one. At this point, go ahead and remove all the bolts except for that top bolt. With all those bolts removed, that top bolt is still in place, but it is loose enough that I'll be able to wiggle the cover. And this is what she's going to look like. Just as a quick tip, I hit all of these bolts with PB Blaster the night before I started this project. You should now be able to proceed around the outside seal of the front differential with a flathead screwdriver, if you're careful, or a putty knife. All you're trying to do is break the old seal. Slowly work your way around the cover, and eventually this will happen. With all the fluid drained out, or at least most of it drained out, you can now go ahead and remove that top bolt and completely remove the front cover on this differential. Here I'm removing that front cover very carefully, making sure not to bang it on anything, and allow the rest of the fluid to drain out. With that done, it's time to go to town with that brake cleaner. Just start spraying everything inside of this front differential with that brake cleaner. You're also going to want to spray the inside of the cover there as well. So go ahead and just hit it. Brake cleaner is fairly cheap. I'm going to use this entire can on this project. I'll be careful, try not to get any on you. The differential's clean, but now it's time to get all this old seal off of both the cover and the differential housing itself. You're going to need a razor blade for this. Go around and carefully remove all of the old seal. Not just some of it, not just most of it, all of it. I've got that old seal off that cover of that differential. I've cleaned the entire cover out perfectly. You could eat soup out of that if you wanted to. Maybe that's a video for another time. Other than that though, she's in really good shape. Just about ready to be prepped to go back on. At this point, if you wanted to, you could clean up the outside really well, go ahead and prime it and paint it any color you wanted. If I had more time, I'd do that. I'd probably paint it orange, like a pumpkin, or maybe even put a smiley face on it. As you can see here, I have very carefully and very thoroughly cleaned all that old seal off the front differential housing itself. Again, you need to get all of it, not most of it, all of it. I'm ready to put the cover back on. Before we put the cover back on though, I need to make a new gasket with that Permatex I showed you earlier. Just go ahead and make a bead around the entire cover, as you see here, making sure to go around each individual bolt hole. Without smearing that bead, carefully, and I do mean carefully, put that cover back in place. You can use that hole in the cover as a nice place to grip it from. Go ahead and start with that top bolt again, and go ahead and give it a nice press, nice even press all the way around that cover. Again, making sure not to smear that bead as you're applying this. You want to make sure that's a nice solid contact all at once. Hold it in place and then go ahead and put in each bolt. Go ahead and get in the habit of doing your bolts in a hex pattern, i.e. go ahead and start with one on one side and then go across to do another one on the other side. That's the way you're going to want to tighten these later. Now right now we're just going to finger tighten all of these bolts, and then once we get them all finger tightened, we're going to go ahead and tighten them just a little bit more, but we're not going to tighten them to torque specs yet. This Permatex really needs to sit for about an hour to kind of set that bead before you go ahead and torque the cover into place. After that bead has set for an hour, the torque specs for the cover bolts is 30 foot-pounds. A word of caution and a quick tip as we move on to this next point. Here's the quick tip. Put a hose on the top of your differential bottle. Word of warning, you're really supposed to wait 24 hours after setting that bead with that Permatex before filling the front differential. It's been 24 hours, so I'm going to go ahead and fill that front differential. You can see how easy this is to do with that little piece of rubber hose in place. For this part of the project, it's taken 1 quart of that front differential gear lubricant. Now, I could use a little bit more, but I'm going to run it for a little while, check the level, and then maybe just top it off. It's time to go ahead and put the plug in. Your torque spec for this plug is 25 foot-pounds. If you've made it to this part of the video, you can see all the torque specs on the screen. Not exactly sure why you're still sticking around because you're done with this project. But having said that, I'm glad you're still sticking around because this is where I ask you for that thumbs up like if you appreciated the video. It's where I ask you to follow me on Instagram, and it's where I tell you maybe, just maybe, I'll see you on the next video. If you enjoy videos about the randomness of our amazing world, consider clicking on the globe to subscribe, or maybe checking out one of the other videos right here.